Hello, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It's my turn to welcome you to our session. We will now be moving into the second part of today's webinar, covering the Mayor's BSIN policy. My name is Ioana, and I'm a Senior Program and Policy Officer at the GLA's Climate Change Mitigation Team. Together with me today, we have Dominic Humphrey from UCL, who will be giving part of today's presentation, focusing on the BSIN portal. We also have Robert Cohen from Verco. Verco has been assisting us throughout the project in the development of the guidance, and he's here to cover any questions that may arise. Today, I will be talking to you about the Mayor's BSIN policy, a truly innovative policy being introduced as part of the New London Plan and which focuses on in-use performance of new buildings in London. In terms of what we will be covering, I'll be starting off with a bit around the policy's background and purpose. I will quickly touch on the development of the policy, and I will outline some key areas of interest from the BSIN energy monitoring guidance. Dominic will then take over and will walk you through the BSIN portal, including a short demonstration of the London building stock model, its relationship with the BSIN portal, and our reporting spreadsheet. So starting off with the background of the policy, as most of you will know, the Mayor has declared a climate emergency and has set a very ambitious target for London to be net zero carbon by 2030. New developments and the New London Plan in particular have a very pivotal role to play in pushing this zero carbon agenda forward, hence the importance we have all placed around planning. Unfortunately, the tools we currently have in hand, tools like the Partel of the building regulations and EPCs, for example, only provide us with an indication of the theoretical performance of how new buildings perform. To therefore bridge that gap between design and real-life operation, we have introduced the BSIN policy as part of policy SI2 of the new intent to publish London Plan. Policy SI2 mostly represents the energy hierarchy, that is the Be Lean, Be Clean, and Be Green steps. We have now introduced a new fourth step under the existing hierarchy, the BSIN stage, which requires all major developments to monitor and report on their energy performance for at least 5 years post-construction via GLA's portal. There are lots of aspects to the purpose of the policy, but it's first and foremost about understanding the actual energy and carbon performance of new buildings, which will also help ensure compliance with the net zero carbon target. As already mentioned, it's of course about assessing the scale of the performance gap and trying to bridge it, raising awareness over building performance and in-use monitoring, both for developers but also occupants. And finally, through the data that we will be collecting over time, having the potential to inform our future policy through the development of our own benchmarks. So what have we done during the time leading up to the development of the BSIN approach? We have had extensive stakeholder engagement with key organizations and groups in London who are doing work around post-construction monitoring. Through those roundtable discussions with BRE, UK GBC, LETI, Better Buildings Partnership, energy management companies, and London boroughs and corporations, we have had discussions to identify potential challenges that could inhibit our process. We also tried to understand the current metering arrangements and costs, and we finally received very valuable feedback on our proposed methodologies. We also carried out an in-depth research all existing monitoring and reporting frameworks out there, and a very detailed optioneering appraisal before we made our final decisions. On the back of all this work, we developed the BSIN framework, which essentially includes the BSIN energy monitoring guidance and the BSIN portal. So as explained, I will be walking you through the guidance, and then we'll hand over to Dominic, who will be discussing the portal. The guidance is a publicly available document which sets out the requirements to comply with the BCN policy. The first version of the guidance was published back in April 2020 for applicants to familiarize themselves with the process. The document that you can see on your left-hand side and which is currently accessible through our consultation webpage is the October 2020 consultation version. There are only minimal changes compared to the April 2020 document, none of those affecting the actual context first presented under the April document. It is important to note that the policy is applicable to all major developments, for example, anything more than 10 residential units and more than roughly 1,000 square meters, I believe, in non-domestic space. It is also good to know that our expectation is that applicants will follow the approach even before the formal London Plan publication. In the guidance, we have set out the responsibilities at each reporting stage for each responsible party. There are three key milestones, the planning stage, the S-build stage, and the in-use stage, where we ask applicants, developers, owners to submit the necessary data set out in the guidance. Particularly at planning stage, we ask for key basic performance data, but also confirmation of the upcoming target dates for each reporting stage. We also ask for confirmation that the metering plans which will enable the in-use performance monitoring and reporting will be implemented as part of each building's design. At S-build stage, roughly before the building is handed over, we ask for an update on the energy performance indicators with a bit more detail this time, but also that all essential metering arrangements are in place and correctly calibrated. Finally, at in-use stage, and for 5 years, once the first year of occupation has passed, owners will be expected to submit the actual energy performance data. And in those cases where this actual performance differs substantially from the estimates, they will need to identify the causes of this divergence and the potential mitigation measures that could improve the situation. Another thing we have introduced in the guidance is the concept of reportable units. It's actually a method of splitting the development in different smaller categories to set out tailored methodologies of monitoring and reporting data per different reportable unit typology. So what developers essentially have to do is split the development into reportable units and provide the necessary indicators for each of them. There's actually an entire section in the guidance, that's Appendix 2 of the guidance, where we have aimed to provide indicative examples of the most typical developments that could come forward and how they are to be split into reportable units, whether these are single-tenanted or multi-tenanted premises. Going into the indicators, here's a brief summary of the KPIs we require reporting against at the various milestones mentioned previously. Firstly, applicants will be expected to submit some key contextual data, information like the development location, typologies of buildings coming forward, and proposed gross internal areas. We also ask for information around the building energy use, such as the grid electricity or gas consumption, or in those instances where there's a connection to a district heating network, the heat imported by that network. At S-build and in-use stages, we also ask for predicted and actual deck grade and rating, which is also a means of extracting some of the information we already request and making the whole process a bit more straightforward. We also want to see data on the renewable energy generation on site, whether this is through solar PV panels or solar thermal panels. We want to understand if there's any energy storage equipment installed and what is its capacity, if there are batteries on site, for instance. We're, of course, after estimates on carbon emissions, mostly at planning stage, as we intend to calculate the emissions at the upcoming reporting stages through the energy info submitted directly to us. At planning stage, though, we're asking for carbon emissions estimates for residential and non-residential uses separately, the estimated carbon shortfall and the agreed carbon offset with the respective local authority. Finally, we're after certain information around plant performance, and mostly this affects communal systems. So information such as the efficiency of its technology, for example, having a centralized plant room with heat pumps and boilers, what is the efficiency of the heat pump and the boiler, the percentage of heat supplied by each of those technologies, and the distribution heat losses associated with the entire system. So hopefully this has given you a good insight of the key elements of the process and requirements presented in the guidance. Before I hand over to Dominic, it is very important to talk about our enforcement mechanisms. So we expect all applicants to study the guidance in detail at planning stage to familiarize themselves with the process and requirements. That's also the stage where we ensure that a commitment has been provided from developers that all buildings on site will be designed in such a way to enable post-construction monitoring through the necessary monitoring infrastructure, and that all BCN indicators will be submitted to the GLA's portal at the appropriate timings. Finally, we have also developed some draft legal wording that we have already shared with boroughs as a template, since we expect that all the above will be secured through the legal agreement between the local authority and the applicant, whether that's through the Section 106 or the condition schedule. This draft legal wording, in brief, sets out the responsibilities at the various reporting stages, as already mentioned, and also asks for applicants to justify any underperformance from the estimated and set out potential mitigation measures to rectify this. So handing over to Dominic now, who has a much more picture-heavy presentation on the BCN portal, which I'm sure you will enjoy. Obviously, the process and methodologies that we have just gone through are critical in obtaining the right information and ensuring that the process followed is verified and the correct one. But the BCN portal will eventually be the very powerful mechanism that will create transparency around the energy and carbon performance of all major new developments in London. And on that note, Dominic, over to you.
Thank you, Anna. As Anna mentioned, my name is Dominic Humphrey. I am from the University College London in the Building Stock Laboratory, and I'm going to briefly talk about the London Building Stock Model and then the BCN portal. The London Building Stock Model was commissioned by the GLA in 2018 and it was delivered in 2020, and it is available to the general public to view online. It is a floor level 3D model of each and every building in London, and as this screenshot shows, what's kind of unique about our model as a sort of digital twin of London is we know at a floor level what's happening at the building, and that is kind of, it spans a wide range of data points across London stock, and typically they're about anything up to 250 items per premises per building, and these span sort of physical and occupancy characteristics such as so maybe height or building material or what's happening on that floor, or specifically the model's intended purpose was to look at energy and energy consumption in the built stock in London. So sort of some brief sort of stats from the model. It covers around 2 million self-contained units, and that is sort of analogous to a building in many cases, but in certain cases it could be where several buildings have merged or divided over time, as they tend to do with development and redevelopment. That covers somewhere in the region of 3.8 million unique premises, and that spans about 430 million square meters of floor space. And as these sort of diagrams or graphs on the page show, this these are kind of the occupancy characteristics of the stock, as measured either by the count of premises or the floor area. And the coloured codes there run from classifying the stock by pure non-domestic use with a single tenant to pure domestic use with a single household. And then as a kind of more sort of breakdown, sort of give some example of the data that you can see within the London building stock model. And this is sort of looking at non-domestic use classified by that kind of commercial activity. And sort of the chart down there in the bottom right looks at just sort of pure non-domestic single tenant, and those just sort of office activity. And that shows that about 12% of all of London falls into this sort of categorization of a single tenant commercial building, and within that about 1.5% of London's entire floor space is office floor space, and that's across all 33 boroughs. This model was launched this summer. It's available at the moment online. The URL we shared. This allows any person to go and click on any building and see a lot of these sort of data points that we've talked about. And part of the intention of the B-Scene was to show the B-Scene data in the context of the London building stock model, and the sort of behind the scenes, both of these data sets will be closely interlinked, which is sort of drives some of the data points we ask to collect and the way that we link records to ensure that we're collecting the right record for the right building across time. So the B-Scene portal will be accessed through the existing web map that you can already get to. And sort of the intention of the portal is a place to collate energy performance data on top of the data that we already have within the London building stock model about a building, which so that comes from things at the moment like energy performance certificates or display energy certificates. It'll provide a single location to submit the data that you need to submit for the B-Scene. And for the public, that will kind of give them a way of sort of understanding which buildings are involved in the B-Scene and their level of compliance within that. And longer term, this is going to establish sort of post-construction monitoring as a good practice. And London's sort of unique in Britain, if not the world, in being sort of putting this data out there into the public and making it accessible. So at the moment, there's the primary way of submitting data to the portal is via an offline spreadsheet. So you don't have kind of concerns if you're filling in lots of data points that the system might kind of suspend or crash and you'll lose your data. You'll fill it all in offline as and when you want to, and then email and upload it to the portal. Longer term, we could also offer an online lodgement system for something similar to a web form, and we'd be interested in collecting some feedback on that point. So what I'm going to talk through now is the current offline spreadsheet system. So at the moment, you'll go to the B-Scene webpage, you'll be able to download this spreadsheet, and that's available now. And within the spreadsheet, there are some instructions, but I'm just going to give you a quick sort of run through the data you need to provide and how the spreadsheet works. You need to provide one spreadsheet which contains the whole B-Scene process. So that's sort of each stage of reporting is all within this one spreadsheet, and then you can upload that one each time, and our system behind the scenes will kind of extract out the data for the specific stage. The spreadsheet uses macros, and part of that is to avoid users having to repeat the work and the data they're putting in, so as to make it more user friendly. And as a sort of there's only one sheet that you need to input data in, and that is the input data tab, and you only put data into yellow or blue cells, but I will step you through an example spreadsheet now. So as I said before, you need to put in data in the one sheet, which is input tab. When you first get to that sheet, as the top image shows here, you'll be asked to select from the list which stage of the B-Scene policy you are submitting for. And that means that in many cases, once you've submitted for the initial planning stage, when you go to the next stage, you'll find that the broad majority of the film's already completed, because things like the contextual data about the site are already inputted, but you can, if they have changed slightly between stages, you can update them, and those changes will then be carried forward. And as I said, sort of to make this slightly more user friendly, we use macros, and part of that will check the data you're putting in, that it's valid, so that you don't have the problem that you submit data and there's a sort of typo or an error within the sheet. And it also means that you can see how far each data sheet you've got through. So there's this sort of progress bar running along the top. And then, as I sort of mentioned here, this is sort of moved from planning to as built, and you see that we get some different data points here, and we fill those in, and we can see here on the second one that when we start that sheet, it's already 90% completed because it's copied through the data from the first planning stage, so we don't have to re-input that data. So we just put in the kind of last 10% that's specific to the as built stage. And then that same process applies for the kind of in-use stage. And there's some macros there that allow you to copy addresses through each stage seamlessly without having to copy and paste and sort of omitting any problems that might happen through sort of user errors. So that is quickly how the spreadsheet works. And then when that's completed, at the moment, that's a return by email form. But as we discussed before, this might change to sort of a more fully online system in due course. So once that data is submitted to us or to the GLA, it then goes up onto a server, and then the data that you put into the spreadsheet is then sort of extracted and checked. And then once that has sort of been through, some of those data points will then become the data that is used to populate the map. So that returns back to the kind of the map we have at the moment. So there will be a new data layer on that with a sort of limited subset of the data that goes into the spreadsheet that you provide. And that's kind of tailored to what we think is of sort of public interest and the sort of be seen policy objectives. So at the moment, these 4 fields will be a sort of a summary of developments, that sort of contextual data about where the development is, the number of units, the mix of uses within the development, and then the energy emissions projected and actual, and then some sort of details on the energy system used, and sort of things like renewable, how it's heated, and where the electricity comes from. And that is split between domestic and non-domestic. So this is yet to go live, so we're still working on the design here, but this will essentially be an extra layer on the existing map. So on the existing map on the left-hand side, you have these data panels that kind of allow you to look at different layers at the same time. So you'll be able to compare the be seen data with some of the existing data layers we have on the map. So you'll click that on, and then the individual developments will be represented by points, and those will be color coded based on the stage of be seen they're sort of currently within. And there'll also be a link on that page that takes you back to the landing page that gives you all the sort of policy guidance and the wider objectives of the be seen policy. So then when you click on one of these points, you will get those sort of selected key data sets that we mentioned. And this again is sort of the design is in development, but this is sort of a mock-up to show you what kind of thing you might get when you click on a development. So if there's one reportable unit or multiple reportable units, it looks slightly different. And on this one here, sort of is just showing the sort of overview for the whole development for all units, whether residential or non-residential. And as you can see, that you could tab through to see those different data points that we've discussed. And that's kind of a brief intro into the portal.
Thank you, Dominic. Thank you very much. And of course, thanks to all for joining and listening and staying with us. Hopefully you have found this quite useful. We're more than happy to hear your thoughts on what was presented today on Be Seen. You can complete the consultation survey on the link provided by the 15th of January 2021. There are also email accounts available if you want to get in touch, and the session is being recorded, so there will be a link to it available in YouTube shortly. We're more than happy now to take any of your questions. We should probably have roughly 30 minutes left for Q&A. Thank you very much.